David Vox Mullen here to tell you all about what's new this fall on the DVM Podcast Empire. The new TV season is here and we've got a great lineup for you. New shows like Gotham, The Flash, Forever, iZombie, Better Call Saul, Constantine, The Messengers, and Wayward Pines. We've also got new DVMPE original shows like Movie Mojo Monthly, Loot the Room, TV Resurrection, The Comic Book Podcast, Fangirl Zone, Push the Button, and The Windy City Rejects. And yes, all of your favorites are coming back as well, like the Podcast of Interest, Arrowcast, American Horror Cast, The New Who Podcast, Game of Thrones, Grimm, Once Upon a Time, The Walking Dead, and so much more. Of course, absolutely none of this would be possible without the support of our listeners just like you. So please consider your continuation of support by telling all of your friends about us, shopping online through our Amazon portals, or simply by donating directly at dvmpe.com. The DVM Podcast Empire. We don't just watch TV, we live it. You're listening to the DVM Podcast Empire. Now with over 1 million downloads.
1 million downloads.
Find us online at dvmpe.com.
100% free.
1,000,000% fan.
And now,
Push the button.
Is it possible that we have permitted ideology, political and economic philosophies, and governmental policies to keep us from considering the very real, everyday problems of our people?
So what if my feelings are hurt? Does that give you the right to prevent others from expressing their opinions?
Wait a second, Doc! Are you telling me that this sucker is nuclear?
Hey, can you push the button?
Do not touch that button.
Hey, can you push the button?
Do not touch that button.
Hey, can you push the button?
Do not touch that button.
Mr. Anderson.
Don't push it.
Hey everybody, welcome back once again to Push the Button, your number one podcast for all things that get you hot. I am your host, David Vox Mullen.
And I am your other host, Mr. Anderson.
And today, we're going to be talking about something that's a little more festive. And by festive, because, it's fall, the holidays are coming. We've got Halloween coming up. We've got Thanksgiving, and, of course, Christmas and Hanukkah and Kwanzaa. I know you celebrate Kwanzaa. And, we are going to be talking about some of our favorite tales. But we want to talk about this because in late October of this year, it hit the news that at just 9 years old, Lexi is already tackling some of life's largest mysteries, namely the Tooth Fairy, Santa Claus, and the Easter Bunny. Warning, childhood spoilers are ahead. In a letter that is both adorable and heartbreaking for any parent hoping their child holds on to the fantasy of childhood for as long as possible, Lexi explains that she doesn't believe in the Tooth Fairy anymore. She goes on and says, "I know it's you who gets the money and puts it under my pillow, Mom and Dad," Lexi writes. If anything, Lexi seems more concerned about how her parents might take the news rather than being troubled by the loss of one of childhood's most important figures. "I'm sorry if this is hard for you, but I'm 9 now," she writes. But Lexi doesn't stop there. She follows her debunking of the Tooth Fairy with 2 more bombs. She doesn't believe in Santa Claus and knows it's her dad hiding Easter eggs. The full text of the letter reads, "Dear Tooth Fairy, I don't believe in the Tooth Fairy anymore. I know it's you who gets the money and puts it under my pillow, Mom and Dad. I'm sorry that this is hard for you, but I'm 9 now. P.S. I don't believe in Santa Claus either. Love, Lexi. P.P.S. Daddy, I knew it was you last Easter hiding my Easter eggs." Now, Lexi's dad posted the photo of the letter on Reddit after finding it on her pillow. So it's a cute story. It's touching, and it really brings a lot of things to light because when I mentioned this possible topic to you, I mentioned don't believe in Santa Claus, don't believe in Tooth Fairy, don't believe in the Easter Bunny, and you went and Jesus, which I knew you were going for. And it's funny because that's always been a big point of contention for me. I know that there are a lot of atheists who refuse to tell that story to their kids. And I also know that there are a lot of Christians who refuse to tell that story to their kids.
For different reasons.
For completely different reasons. And it's one of those things where, you know, going back to one of our earlier episodes when we talked about like why we believe what we believe, and probably in the Meet the Host episode, but there's that part of me that, and again, I'm only speaking for myself. I can't speak for everybody else, but there's that part of me that really enjoys the magic aspect of it, the magical, you know, whatever, the Disney-esque moment. And I think that's why a lot of people do it. But again, you know, and I think from what you were saying, that's a hindrance.
Well, I think that
as a
that's
parenting
one objection that you hear. I'm sorry?
I said from a parenting perspective, it can be a hindrance as far as an education of your child.
Yeah, and I hear that is the number one objection. Well, so now we're not supposed to tell our children stories or let them watch movies or read any fictional books. This is it excites children's imaginations and these kinds of things. It's good to believe in fairy tales when you're a child. It's part of being a child is imagining things and pretending, having imaginary friends and stuff like that. To me, I don't think I don't find that any of that stuff goes away if you tell your kids the truth. I think you can still, I mean, when I look at my own personal journey, when I found out that Santa Claus was a lie, and that the Easter Bunny was a lie, and the Tooth Fairy was a lie, just from my own personal experience, I started lying to my parents. I started lying to them because, I thought, I'm not going to get any more presents if they know that this is not real.
Okay.
So I kept up I think I knew when I was in first grade. I think somebody told me or smartened me up, and I kept it going until I was in third grade.
Wow.
So it caused me to lie. And then when I think back to my childhood, and I don't feel that my childhood hit the edge of a cliff or a brick wall when I found out that Santa Claus wasn't real.
Right.
My love for professional wrestling didn't hit a brick wall when I became an insider and learned the tricks and trades of the business.
It's still real to me, damn it.
It actually, I found that it made my experience with professional wrestling more enriching, more exciting.
Well, you know,
still dream. You can still imagine. I personally have a hard time telling my children. One of the first things that they're ever going to learn from me is going to be a lie.
Right. Well, you know, I think that's very interesting, and I've often been concerned with, you know, as a parent, you know, do you tell your kids that there is no Santa Claus, there is no Easter Bunny, there is no Tooth Fairy, and then how do you somehow expect them to accept the possibility that there is a God or that there is a Jesus? And to me, I've always wrestled with that. Now, I want to tell you a little story. We're going to go back in time. I was 5 years old. I remember it specifically because my birthday is actually on Christmas Eve. So I remember it was my 5th birthday. And my mom was single at the time. And I remember going to bed. This had to be like, 1982. And I remember we had my birthday party, which was, you know, we'd have, you know, family and friends over. And at the time, my mom was, you know, an alcoholic. So it was partying, you know. Not for me, but obviously I'd go to bed and wake up and there'd be people passed out all over and, you know, stuff like that. But that's another podcast for another day.
Another podcast.
But I remember on Christmas morning, you know, I remember being in bed, being afraid to get up because I didn't want to catch Santa. because if I think I was told that if Santa sees you catching him or whatever, he takes all your presents and leaves or something. Some BS way to keep me from coming out of the bed or something.
Awful.
Right? But I remember one year, my mom, I feel so bad for my mom, but I remember one year, she feels bad about this too. I woke up and she was, passed out on the couch with, one of my presents in her hand because she couldn't get it all done, And it was in that moment when I realized, oh, okay. At 5, it was gone for me. And it was, it wasn't terrible at all. I still got Christmas presents. I still enjoyed Christmases. It just became more about getting cool stuff. But yeah, it never bothered me knowing. And I was never one of those kids who was like, there's no Santa Claus, man. I never did that to anybody.
We're on telling all the other kids.
Yeah. And we'll get into that a little bit more in a minute. But the irony here is that I didn't have a problem not believing in Santa Claus. I didn't have a problem not believing in the Tooth Fairy and the Easter Bunny. Yet, ironically, I still don't have a problem believing in God and Jesus. So it's like, well, what the heck is that, But as a parent, I still did it with my kids, and I think maybe as an adult I feel cheated. If that makes any sense. I feel like, damn it, I didn't get to enjoy the magic that I see on the movies and TV, and the kids love it, and I never went to Disneyland. I never got that, So it's like there was that part of me that's always like, I wanna do for my kids what I didn't get to enjoy. And right or wrong, I made that choice and I did it, and obviously they've kind of come through that now and gotten over it.
But is that a reality, or is it just in the movies? And is it? Yes, I understand that. I remember being so excited when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Santa Claus had come. I think that I would have been just as excited if the Santa Claus myth hadn't been there.
Right.
And it was just about the day and spending time with your family and opening presents and helping those who are less fortunate, having good food, great music, which my wife has been listening to for the last 2 months, by the way.
Oh, no, I have a rule in my house.
My wife starts listening to Christmas music in August or September.
My wife, if she had her way, we'd be listening to it all year round. And it has nothing to do with faith. She just loves Christmas music.
My wife loves Christmas music also.
And we have a Mullen family moratorium on Christmas music until after Thanksgiving. The day after Thanksgiving, when you start decorating the house, then you can kick it in. But until
that's all you hear, I'm sure, for the month.
Oh my God, it does not stop.
Sure.
It's funny because I get a kick out of a little bit of it. I'd say like the week of Christmas is probably when I enjoy Christmas music. Yeah. Like doing that little bit of shopping, and everybody hears the same songs in the mall and all that stuff. I like it then.
What's your favorite Christmas song?
Ironically, what I really like is it's either "Oh Holy Night," sung by somebody who can really belt out those high notes, or "Ave Maria." Not for anything Catholicism, I just think it's a beautiful piece of music.
That's good.
But yeah, those two. It's funny. I'm not a Catholic. I don't know much about the Catholic faith or history, but I do love their music. I think it's very haunting. I like their chamber music and their choir music. I think it's very very well thought out. Very it reminds me of the classical composing that used to be done by Beethoven, Mozart, all those guys.
Sure.
A lot of that is still implemented in Catholic music, as opposed to the Christian contemporary pop music that they do these days. But yeah, moratorium, no Christmas music until day after Thanksgiving. And she'll try too, like on the ride home from where we were for Thanksgiving dinner, she'll try to put it on and be like, no, wait till tomorrow. Yeah. My teenager, she has finally, and I don't know if it's just, being a teenager, full of angst, or rebellion, but she was just like, I hate Christmas music. It's like, all right, well. But, yeah.
So getting back to
the point. I wanted to just say, you know, I know I have friends who are believers who, and when I say believers, I mean believers in God, who make it a point not to tell their children. Now, I'm assuming, because I don't know specifically, but I'm assuming it's because they don't want to have their kids be faced with that same turmoil of, well, if Santa Claus was something my parents told me and the Easter Bunny was something my parents told me, well, wasn't God and Jesus the same stuff my parents told me? So
I've actually heard that argument too.
Yeah, my problem with that argument is if you truly believe in God, then wouldn't that be strong enough to withstand it anyway?
Yeah, and well,
to
me, if there's enough evidence to support your idea, then yeah, those other things shouldn't matter.
Right.
You're right.
So to me, that looks weak, personally. And then of course, I won't lie, and I feel bad for being like this, but you know, when my kids were younger, and like friends or family who made it a point to not do that with their kids, their kids would always be like, "There's no Santa," and I'd be like, "Shut up, you little bastard!" And it's like,
so.
But is that wrong? Maybe they're like, trying to save the world.
Well, I think that this kind of thinking early on sets us up for cognitive dissonance. That idea that that something cannot possibly be true. That a man, you've got an immortal elf who flies through the sky without the aid of technology, save for some reindeer. One specifically has a light-up nose.
That's what does it all, though.
And he has enough toys. He has enough room on this tiny sleigh that he can pack all of the toys for all of the Christians in the world, because Santa only visits Christians. And he breaks and enters everybody's house every year and eats all the milk and cookies from every single house that he visits. This kind of stuff sets us up for cognitive dissonance down the road, that we know that something can't possibly be true, but we believe it anyway.
Yeah.
And it sort of blurs the line between fantasy and reality. And I think, and this is a topic for another podcast, but it sets us up for belief in other extraordinary supernatural stories, myths, as well as belief in things like unscientific medical practices like homeopathy, Reiki, acupressure, acupuncture, cupping, that kind of stuff.
Hey, I like cupping. Wait, are we talking about the same thing?
I don't think so.
I'm pretty sure we're not.
Are you talking about the cupping that Joey experienced on Friends? Sure. There was definite cupping going on. That's how they do pants.
Okay. Okay, well, see, that's a really interesting point, but that obviously couldn't have always been the case, because let's see, we get Santa Claus is based on St. Nicholas, and I wanted to talk about the origin of St. Nicholas. So if you're interested, boys and girls, gather around. Uncle Voxy here is going to tell you a story. We're all aware that Santa Claus is based on the very real St. Nicholas of Myra, correct? He was a 5-foot-tall Greek guy with a broken nose. He lived in modern-day Turkey around AD 200 to 300, somewhere in there. And he was renowned for his generosity, his kindness to children, and generally behaving like the reigning champion of a hobo bare-knuckle boxing league. But time warps all, of course. The Santa Claus we know nowadays is a stout lily-white guy in a bizarre velvet suit who's loved by children for enslaving hundreds of Legolas's cousins. And truth be told, all St. Nick and Santa Claus have in common these days is a white beard and maybe a penchant for Coca-Cola. So, yes, the real Santa was truly a rough and tumble son of a gun. His exploits may have been embellished over the years, but the guy was constantly in and out of jail and tortured. The fact that his face was pretty much pulverized by the time of his death gives validity to the hardness of his lifestyle. Particularly that time, he cold-cocked a bishop in the face for saying that Jesus wasn't divine enough. Not only did he smack the bishop,
I like him already,
but he did it in front of Emperor Constantine and so many other people that his holy fisticuffs became the stuff of legend. But bishop slapping wasn't Nicholas's only claim to fame. Of all his strong opinions, none matched his hatred of paganism. According to legend, Nick then personally oversaw the violent destruction of the Temple of Artemis. And as luck would have it, there were people who actually lived in the temple. So what happened when the now homeless priests ran up to Nicholas and begged for mercy? "Go to hell's fire, which has been lit for you by the devil," he replied, his world-weary belly shaking like a bowl full of broken glass. St. Nick's done more for the wee ones of the world than to simply command his elven hive to build Tonka trucks. According to one fable, Nicholas met an innkeeper who butchered 3 kids and pickled them during a famine so he could try to pass them off as ham. After God's cosmic prodding led Nicholas to their corpses, he prayed to divinity, stitch their little salty dismembered bodies back together. We're not saying that you should build a trio of barfy gherkin golems on Christmas Eve instead of gingerbread man. Actually, screw it. That's exactly what we're saying.
Wait a minute. Are you saying that this guy, he stitched little kids' bodies together?
Yeah, to show what this guy had actually done.
St. Nicholas did this.
St. Nicholas came across an innkeeper who had butchered 3 children and pickled them during a famine so that he could pass them off as ham.
Okay.
And so after God led Nicholas to their corpses, he prayed to divinity to stitch their little salty dismembered bodies back together. So in reality, he literally put their bodies back together and put them on display to show what this innkeeper had done. Yeah, that's pretty twisted. Saint Nicholas doesn't live in the North Pole. No, he lives across Europe, actually in many places. A little bit here, a little bit there. In 1087, Italian sailors took the remains of Saint Nicholas from Turkey in a harrowing heist that involved hoodwinking some monks and escaping an angry mob of villagers. His holly jolly bones were laid to rest in Bari, Italy, where they currently reside, much to the chagrin of the Turkish Santophiles. To make matters more confusing, an abbey in Ireland also claims to possess part of the body, and a bunch of random body parts said to belong to Saint Surly are still strewn all over the globe as relics. So if Santa doesn't get you what you want for Christmas this year, try writing his tooth in Germany next year.
What an awful story.
Yeah, right? Not quite what you want to be thinking about at Christmas time. And obviously there's a lot more that go into, his story, but why that guy was chosen, I don't know. Is it just because he was known to be generous to children, so we used him? I have no idea.
That's probably what it was. And
and then of course
away all the nasty stuff and
right. And then, we get into, we think, George Washington was a great guy, but, he had his faults. We don't talk about those. He could not tell a lie.
Yeah. I feel like we finally do, though. And that's the beauty of having information at our fingertips is we're able to find this stuff out that we never thought of or it was never brought to our attention. Yeah. Like this story right now, like delving into the St. Nicholas story and where it came from.
Yeah, it's weird. It's very weird. Now, and again, I should have done more research, but I remember reading or hearing or seeing a documentary that talked about how the current depiction of what we have of Santa Claus is based on marketing by Coca-Cola in the late 1800s. So I don't know if we were calling him Santa Claus before that, or if they were just calling him Saint Nicholas.
And that's not necessarily what he looked like, the jolly old...
Right. But the current imagery we have of Santa Claus was, in fact, the marketing of Coca-Cola. And, in fact, if I remember correctly, it was actually the head of marketing of Coca-Cola that guy looked like. So when they were coming up with the designs for posters and stuff to sell Coca-Cola during the holidays, they created this, Santa Claus.
So do you think it was the Coca-Cola marketing team that also developed White Jesus?
I think there was just Irish Catholics who did that.
White Jesus from the Middle East?
I've never had a problem with brown Jesus ever.
Well, I've never seen a brown Jesus, actually. I've never actually seen an artistic depiction of Jesus that gives him Middle Eastern characteristics.
Yeah.
He always looks like a white guy.
He's got to have a big nose.
And a good-looking white guy at that, too.
Yeah.
Long hair.
I will say I do like the depictions, the artistic depictions of Jesus as more of a muscular guy, not like a Schwarzenegger guy. But at least he was taking care of himself as he was doing his ministry.
He was in pumping iron.
He was
pumping iron too.
I love it. You got to do it.
So you got the St. Nicholas story, which is horrible, right? Horrifying.
Seriously, it is.
When you really peel back the layers of the onion, it's a pretty horrifying story.
I'd go with the Coca-Cola dude any day.
Have you heard of the Krampus, the Christmas Krampus?
It sounds vaguely familiar.
This is it's the folklore of some Alpine countries.
Okay.
Like Austria, Romania, Bavaria, Czech Republic, Hungary, Croatia, and it coincides with St. Nicholas. While St. Nicholas comes and rewards good children who were well behaved, the Krampus is this nasty little beast-like creature who will capture particularly naughty children and carry them away to his lair. So here's another problem that I have with this whole idea is this, and we talked about this in the morality episode, this reward, you're behaving all year long to A, be rewarded by St. Nicholas, and B, escape punishment from, in this case, the Christmas Krampus, but also in our folklore or our mythology, Santa Claus will reward bad children with coal and all kinds of other nasty little... Well,
I'm going to jump off there because it's unknown to me in America, but I have some friends from Europe, and they talk about Black Pete. So, you know what? I have a good buddy of mine from Scotland, actually the Isle of Lewis off the coast of Scotland. His name is Ian McKinnon. Ian, can you tell us a little bit about Black Pete?
I can give you 2 minutes of my time to tell you about Black Pete.
Yes.
Okay, now this is something that actually isn't particularly common here in Scotland, although it is common in Scandinavia. But I was told a story when I was younger, and that was that Black Pete was basically like Santa's spy who would come around and like peer in through the windows and stuff, and because he was black, obviously at night time you wouldn't see him, and he would then proceed to tell Santa Claus if you had been, and therefore he was the guy that you had to impress.
So kind of like the equivalent of the Elf on the Shelf.
I suppose so, yes.
Yeah, that's a new thing here in the States.
So yes, I suppose it is something akin to that, yes.
Oh, wow.
Does Black Pete actually impose sentences, or does he carry out the sentence if you're naughty?
As far as I'm aware, he's purely a messenger. He's just he takes it all in and he passes the info back to the big man.
He's the NSA.
Yes, exactly.
But you fear Black Pete, right?
Oh, I did. Absolutely, I did. I don't fear him so much now, but
right.
he was kind of an imposing and intimidating little figure.
Wow. All right.
There you go.
Thanks for your 2 minutes, Ian.
Not a problem. Nice
care.
to be on here.
Thanks, dude.
We'll see you, buddy. Take care.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
So
we don't go with the Black Pete here in the States.
just white Santa.
just white Anglo-Saxon Santa.
As was it Megyn Kelly last year on Fox News? Said,
Oh man, what a
white guy. Sorry.
What a flub
Jesus
up.
is a white guy. Sorry.
Which is, clearly Jesus is Hispanic. I mean, let's be
Hispanic.
honest. Jesus. I'm always torn when I meet somebody whose name is spelled J-E-S-U-S. Like, do I call him Jesus or do I just call him Jesus or what?
I would totally call him Jesus.
I would too. I was like, well,
Nobody fucks with the Jesus.
Yeah, man. All right.
Yeah. So, getting back to the topic. This idea that we have to lie to our kids.
Yeah.
In order for them to have any magic or joy. I read an article, I'm just going to quote briefly, from pbs.org. This psychologist said, if you're struggling over whether or not to tell Santa's story, you may take comfort in the notion that it doesn't really harm children to imagine. Now, no, I agree. It doesn't harm children to imagine. But there's a fine line between imagining and actually believing that things are true. And recognizing things that are indeed false.
Right.
And we talked about this idea that when our kids find out, that in my case, for instance, I started lying.
Right.
To me, it teaches kids it's okay to lie about certain things. And in actuality, it is okay to lie about certain things. I mean, I used the analogy earlier, in an earlier episode where, if a lady comes to you beaten, battered, and bruised, and she says that her husband is after her,
right.
Will you please allow me to stay here? And then a minute later, the door, there's a knock at the door, and there's a guy who looks like he's got murderous intent in his eyes, and he's asking, where's my wife? I think it behooves you to lie in that situation.
Sure.
He's not here. If somebody in the media asks you if you're a person.
If you're not a person, please call us and let us know.
If you're a person in the media spotlight and the media asks you a personal question that's none of their business, generally speaking, if you are to say no comment,
I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky.
You got any cigars?
Hey,
I'm smoking a cigar right now. I do. But if you say no comment, you are admitting guilt, basically.
For the record, I wasn't a fan of Bill Clinton personally, but when they asked him that point blank, I'd have lied too. It's like, come on.
Yeah, who wouldn't? Everybody would.
Did you cheat on your wife? No, everything's good.
So I think things are situational, but I don't think, lying to your kids because you want them to experience this mythology. See, I don't have a problem with allowing my kids to experience that stuff. We can still celebrate Santa Claus and
sure.
Saint Nick or whatever, and the Tooth Fairy and the Easter Bunny. But our plan is that we're going to tell our kids up front, look, this is a tradition that we in America celebrate, and here's the deal up front. And, when you get your presents on Christmas morning, it's just mom and dad who wrap them up. But we can still go visit Santa Claus and sit on his lap and have all the fun associated with that holiday.
Yeah.
I feel like, I'm sorry, I'm rambling here, but
no.
I feel like, and I had a family member who, people have recently got into this whole elf on the shelf thing. Now that's an additional.
That's new. Yeah, that's weird.
It's like sweetest. What sweetest day is to Valentine's Day? It's like in addition to. And so, the idea is, I guess, that this elf monitors your children, which is creepy. Monitors your children to make sure that they're well behaved, and he reports back to Santa every night. Now, during the day, he's inanimate, and he just sits there, and then magically comes to life when you're sleeping. And then he goes and tells Santa, gives him the 411 on what you've been doing.
Okay.
And then so my family member, son, caught her in the act of moving this thing. And I guess you have to move it from place to place every day. Like the kid has to go find the elf in a new place. The kid caught mom in the act of moving the elf and said, was pissed. You've been lying to me, Mom. The elf on the shelf is not really real. It's you. You're the one moving it. And this family member actually went through the time and effort to concoct a letter from Santa Claus to this young man and just continued to lie even more and said, no, sometimes mommies and daddies have to help me, yada, yada, yada. And it just this lie just got exponentially bigger.
Yeah.
And that's my problem with it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, if your kid is that animate about it, yeah, there needs to be a conversation had.
It's time to let them know.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I can't remember how my teenager did it. It was something she just kind of, I think she just kind of said, you do know I know, right? It was okay, she's 30. No, I think it was when she was about 8 or 9. Yeah, I think about 8 or 9. Same age as my littlest one now. Mm-hmm. And my littlest one won't say nothing because she likes the hall. And I've never been one to say, if you don't believe, then you don't get nothing. But I will admit selfishly that there's that part of me that feels okay, well, I wish I was getting the credit for providing all these awesome things. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's right or wrong either. Trying to steer my life through morality. I don't know.
Yeah, no.
If I need to be, it's all about dad here. And I will say that knowing that it's supposed to be traditionally in celebration of the birth of Jesus, as I was younger, I started to see the disconnect between the initial celebration and what it's become today. And like you said, we keep adding new traditions to it and stuff like that. You know what it really, I think, boils down to is just the joy of tradition. Because, I mean, if we want to get into historical stuff, I mean, Jesus wasn't born on December 24th.
There's no way he was.
No, he was born in, I think, the summer. But I think, if I remember correctly, it was either the Celts or the Druids or whatever, they celebrated the winter solstice, and I believe it was during the Crusades, which is a great idea, when they were talking about what they would accept and what they wouldn't accept, they accepted the celebration of the winter solstice. They just made it about the celebration of Jesus, which is odd, but
and for the record, almost every tradition that we have that surrounds Christmas today in America, especially.
Mm-hmm.
None of them are Christian. The remaining elements of Christianity are the things that nobody likes. That's the stuff that people think suck. I'm sorry to say that, but that's just reality. People don't particularly. We got to go to church on Christmas Eve. Got to go. And the nativity scene. Those are the only two things that exist from all the burning Yule logs is a Viking tradition. The exchange of gifts is a pagan tradition. The Christmas tree itself is I think a Viking tradition or a pagan tradition. I mean, almost every tradition that we utilize for celebration of Christmas evolves from a pagan tradition.
Yeah.
And that's okay. I mean, it should be okay.
And and there's, a fine line. I don't think God cares specifically what we're using. I think when it gets down to it, it really boils down to, what, like I said, I think we just enjoy tradition. I think we enjoy repetition. I think that's the problem with why religion has gotten so rampant in this world, because we enjoy tradition. It's what we do every year. It's what we do every week. It's what we do, I mean, Sunday dinners with a family, or, football, or whatever. I mean, it's a traditional thing. I think we as people like tradition.
We are pattern-seeking and pattern-forming
creatures.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree. I think that is what it is. And, yeah, I'm not sure what the point is. I'm not sure what...
what the point of...
What the point of, continuing to add these traditions.
Well, I think because it's fun.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with tradition. I just personally, and I'm not judging other parents. Like, please don't take me in the wrong way. Like,
I admit I totally judged people, and I don't know if I feel bad for it.
Yeah.
But I've definitely judged parents.
Well, and in reality, we all judge everybody. I mean, that's just human nature. But I'm not. I might judge it for myself and say, like, that's not what I would do. But I don't hold any ill regard for those parents who choose to.
And I wouldn't say something to those parents either.
No. Now, here's the problem that I'm going to run into, because our kids, fortunately, right now are only 9 months old.
Right.
9 months and 3 weeks. And at some point, they're going to go to school, and we're going to get a call from Johnny's parents saying, Mr. Anderson, do you know that your son, Pierce, told my kid of 4 years old that Santa Claus isn't real? Now, how do we navigate that minefield?
Well, first of all, this is America, and you can raise your child any way you wish. And I think at the end of the day, your favorite phrase.
You gotta put money in the square jar. We're gonna have an
You'd prefer
end of the
I
day
said
jar.
shit than
We're gonna have
at the
an end of the day jar.
Well, when we're done thinking, when it's time to be done thinking about stuff, I would say you have every right to say, well, I choose not to lie to my kids. You do whatever the hell you want.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I guess I probably will try not to be as blunt as that. But
well, if you're going to be bold enough to do that, if you're going to be bold enough to be honest with your kids, and let's be honest, it does take boldness to be completely honest with your children.
Yeah.
And what'll be really interesting is as your kids grow up to see how you struggle with that, because not just that stuff, but like there'll be other things where, should I be honest with my kids about these things? Should I shelter them from certain things? I mean, it's weird. It's a weird, messed up, chaotic world that we live in, bro. When you're throwing these kids out there, it's like, ah.
When I want my kids to have the power of logic and reason at their fingertips. I want my kids to question things. I want my kids to not just accept that when their friend says, hey, take these arnica tablets, they'll make you feel better, that my kid's going to look at them and say, I'm going to look that up. I'm going to do some digging. I'm going to research that a little bit and think about it before I actually take that stuff.
You know what might be an interesting way to do it, and I'm not telling you how to parent because I love when people tried that with me.
Please do. That's why I asked the question of the person.
Right? But what might be fun, and one thing that I really liked about my grandfather before he passed when I was younger is whenever I asked him a question that I'm sure he knew, but he wouldn't tell me. He'd say, well, let's look it up. Let's try to find out. Let's see what we can find out about that. And so we would, we'd go to encyclopedias, we'd go to dictionaries, we'd find books, and we'd, stupid stuff like, Grandpa, how does a plane fly? This is a guy who, I didn't understand how planes worked, so he took me to Frankfort, Illinois, where they do flying lessons, and we learned all about Cessna airplanes and took me up in the air and all that. That's the kind of guy my grandpa was, and I think a lot of my logic and reasoning comes from my grandfather.
That's fantastic.
I think instead of saying, well, this is how it is, it should be, well, let's find out together.
Yes. Again, I want to teach my kids how to think, not what to think.
Yeah.
In this household, especially, mommy and daddy have very differing belief systems. And to me, it's sort of a microcosm of the real world. Our kids are going to run into people who believe different things throughout their lives, and they're going to have to work together. And that's what my wife and I have, different beliefs, but we work together on it.
Because you and I clearly can't make a podcast because we have different beliefs.
Oh, right. Yeah. We can have that
conversation. Work together, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it gets to a point where I was saying that, logic and reason, instead of just giving your kids the answer.
Yeah.
I know that I was gonna say that those are all honorable ways to raise children, and it's filled with integrity. However, there will come that day when they're 5, 6 years old in the backseat of the car and you're exhausted, and they're going to go, at just the worst time, Dad, why is this? Right. You're just going to go, just because.
Right. No, I know. And I'll tell you what, there's a story, thinking back to my childhood, one of the clearest memories that I have, one of the things that sort of bother me, and I've always thought, I am not going to do this when I'm a parent. I'm going to try or at least I'm going to try really hard not to, is I remember driving, I was sitting in the back seat behind my dad. My dad drove a Cadillac Eldorado, beautiful green with a beige leather top. And he was driving his car, and when you drive, you correct a little bit with the steering wheel. I asked him, I said, why do you
drive right off to the side?
If you're moving straight forward, why do you keep moving the wheel like that?
Right.
And he wouldn't answer me. He wouldn't give me an explanation. It bothered me, and I kept asking him. And he was like, "You'll find out someday." And I must have been 7 or 8, but and those are tough questions. That's an easy question. There are going to be tough questions where I'm going to say at 6 years old when my kid asks, "Where do babies come from?" Right?
Yeah. When mommies and daddies love each other very much.
Then the stork brings the kid. The end.
Well, in some cultures, people pay high prices.
Yeah. Well, in your case, mommy went into a room with another man, and daddy went into a room by himself.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you're going to have a different story.
I always tell the story. Like, my wife was impregnated by another man while I was on the road.
Gosh.
I was in Texas, and another man impregnated me.
No, you should say I impregnated my wife while I was in Texas.
While I was in Texas. That sounds better, right? Yeah.
Oh, man. See, that's
for those of you who don't know, my wife and I went through in vitro fertilization. So.
And how dare you for not listening to every episode of Push the Button before this one.
Exactly. So, yeah.
That'd be one of those instances, Ken, where I'd be like, son, that's a great question. Let's find out.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not together.
Up on the internet.
Yeah.
We'll
just go to Google, son. You'll find something.
Pornhub.com. What?
And on that note, I'd say it's about time to wrap things up.
Yeah. So, good discussion. Thanks for some good insight, Dave.
Yeah, well, now you know. I have no history of the Easter Bunny or the Tooth Fairy, but St. Nicholas was a wild dude.
Now you know, and knowing is half the battle.
All right, thank you so much for listening, everybody. This was a very insightful episode. I learned a lot more about the mind of a 9-year-old, and which my daughter is, so now I have to have a conversation with her. And more about St. Nicholas than I ever cared to know. And, send us your thoughts. pushthebuttonpodcast@gmail.com. Hit us up on Facebook and Twitter. You can go to our Facebook page, or if you just go to cafepress.com/DVMPE, we've got some cool Push the Button swag available now. We actually have Push the Button buttons that you can buy. They're really cool. Coffee cups, all the stuff that you can do with slapping a logo on something. But if you want to push the button coffee mug, or even one that says "Don't get hot," you should go to cafepress.com/DVMPE, and you can find your push-the-button gear there. And maybe Ken and I could make a few bucks and keep this thing going.
We get a penny off of every coffee cup sold? Or?
Yeah, I think something like that. But definitely do that. Otherwise, hit us up at dvmpe.com. Give us a 5-star review on iTunes. That helps us out greatly. Some of you have already done that. Thank you so much. We love reading your emails. We've got some great emails with topic suggestions, and we'll definitely be doing those in the coming weeks. And, as we roll into the fall and winter of 2014, Ken, do you have anything you want to tell the kiddies?
I just want to say that have a wonderful, festive holiday season. Is it holiday season already? I guess so, sort of, almost. We're getting there.
I'm one of those, because I'm a parent who has to spend time and effort and money and energy on all this shit, Halloween to me starts the holidays.
Yeah.
It's got to buy costumes and candy, and then it's Thanksgiving.
And for us, it's trips to the apple orchards and pumpkin patches.
We just went to the patch last weekend. And
football. And football.
Not in Chicago. Holy crap.
Hey, Green Bay didn't do so well this week either, so.
Yeah, so I hear you.
But yeah, just, you know what? Have a good time. Talk with each other. Educate each other. Listen to each other. But most importantly,
don't get hot.
Hey, can you push the button?
Do not touch that button.
Hey, can you push the button?
Do not touch that button.
Hey, can you push the button?
Do not touch that button.
Mr. Anderson.
Don't push it.